My name is Vivian. I am 34 years old, and I am a senior commercial title examiner for a national real estate firm. My profession is a highly specialized, intensely cynical field of study. I spend my days reading the history of a piece of land, looking for the things people try to hide. I look for unrecorded easements, forged signatures, hidden tax liens, and secret bankruptcies. In the title business, we call these issues a cloud on title. A cloud is a defect. It means that no matter how beautiful the house is, the foundation of ownership is fundamentally flawed, and eventually it will collapse. I know exactly how to secure a piece of property, and I know exactly how to place an unbreakable lock on a piece of dirt. So, when I sat across from my parents and my older brother in the glass-walled conference room of an elite escrow office at exactly 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, I did not look at the panoramic view of the city. I looked at the settlement statement resting on the polished mahogany table between us. My brother, Cameron, was wearing a tailored linen suit, bouncing his leg with arrogant, barely contained excitement. He was there to sign the final closing documents to sell our childhood home for $850,000. My parents, Patricia and Thomas, were beaming at him with absolute pride, ready to watch their golden boy walk away with a massive, life-changing check. They did not know that I had been invited to the closing by the escrow officer. And they certainly did not know that out of that $850,000 sale, Cameron's payout was going to be exactly zero. Welcome back to Family Drama Files, where we tell quiet, true-to-life stories about deep betrayal, methodical justice, and the exact moment someone stops shrinking to accommodate the toxic, cowardly people in their lives. If you have ever been treated like a human ATM by your family, only to watch them hand the fruits of your labor to the golden child, this story is for you. Drop a comment below to let me know where you are listening from, and be sure to subscribe. To understand the absolute, staggering audacity of what my family attempted to do, you have to understand the dynamic of the golden child and the precise, mathematical cruelty of the parents who enable him. I am the youngest of 2 children, but in my family's accounting system, I was never the daughter, I was the safety net. My brother, Cameron, is 3 years older than me. He is conventionally handsome, fiercely charismatic, and possesses the kind of weaponized incompetence that makes people constantly want to rescue him. Cameron does not have jobs, he has ventures. He does not have failures, he has setbacks caused by other people's lack of vision. My parents, Patricia and Thomas, worshipped him. They managed Cameron's life like a frantic public relations firm, trying to keep a scandal out of the press. When Cameron crashed his car at age 19 because he was driving recklessly, my parents drained their savings to buy him a new one so he would not feel discouraged. When Cameron dropped out of 3 different universities, my parents paid off his student loans and told the neighbors he was taking a sabbatical to find his true passion. I, on the other hand, was the invisible workhorse. I did not get a car when I got my driver's license. I was given a bus schedule. When I was accepted into a highly competitive university, my mother looked at the tuition breakdown, sighed heavily, and said, "Vivian, you know we are helping Cameron fund his new app development startup right now. We simply cannot stretch the budget. You will have to take out loans." I did not scream. I did not argue. I just went to the bank, secured the loans, and worked 2 jobs while taking a full course load. I graduated at the top of my class, paid off my debt by age 28, and built a lucrative, rock-solid career in commercial real estate law. I learned very early that if I did not ask my family for anything, they could not hold anything over me. But families like mine view independence as an insult. If you do not need their money, they cannot control you. And more importantly, if you are successful, they view your success as a communal asset. The inciting incident for the ultimate betrayal happened 5 years ago, when I was 29 years old. It was mid-October. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing a complex chain of title for a commercial high-rise, when my phone rang. It was my mother. She was sobbing hysterically. "Vivian," Patricia gasped into the receiver, her voice pitched with absolute panic. "You have to come to the house, please, it is your father. We are going to lose everything." I left work immediately and drove to my childhood home, a sprawling, mid-century modern house in a highly desirable, historic neighborhood. When I walked through the front door, I found my parents sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of past due notices, tax assessments, and contractor estimates. My father looked like he had aged 10 years in a single month. He was holding his head in his hands. What happened? I asked, sitting down across from them. The truth, as it always did with my family, came out in slow, agonizing, humiliating pieces. For the past 3 years, Cameron had been living in Europe, supposedly running an import-export business. In reality, he was bleeding my parents dry. He had convinced them to co-sign a series of massive business loans. When his European venture inevitably collapsed, Cameron simply walked away, leaving my parents holding the bag. To cover Cameron's defaulted loans and save him from international litigation, my parents had secretly taken out a second mortgage on the childhood home. But because they were living on fixed retirement incomes, they could not keep up with the new, astronomical monthly payments. To make matters worse, the house itself was failing. It was 60 years old. The roof was leaking into the master bedroom. The foundation required seismic retrofitting, and the county had just slapped them with a massive property tax reassessment. The bank is threatening to initiate foreclosure proceedings by the end of November, my father whispered, his voice cracking. We owe $40,000 in back payments and penalties just to reinstate the loan. And the roof. The contractors say the structural repairs will cost another $140,000. If we do not fix it, the city will condemn the property. We have no savings left, Vivian. Cameron drained it all. I looked at the paperwork. They needed exactly $180,000 just to save the house and keep a roof over their heads. Where is Cameron? I asked, my voice completely devoid of emotion. He is staying at a wellness retreat in Sedona, my mother sniffled, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. The stress of the business failing caused him to have a nervous breakdown. He needs peace right now. We cannot burden him with this. I stared at her. They were on the verge of homelessness because of their golden boy, and they were still protecting him. We went to the bank to ask for a personal loan, my father said, finally looking up at me with desperate, pleading eyes. They denied us. Our debt-to-income ratio is ruined. Vivian, you are doing so well. You have that big corporate job. We know you have investments. Please, if we lose this house, we have nowhere to go. They were asking me to hand them $180,000 to fix a disaster created entirely by the brother they favored over me. Most people in my situation would have walked out the door. They would have told their parents to sell the house, pay off the debt, and downsize to a small apartment. But I am a title examiner. I look at real estate not as a sentimental object, but as a hard, mathematical asset. My childhood home was located in a neighborhood where property values were skyrocketing. If the structural repairs were made, and the defaulted mortgage was cured, the house would easily be worth nearly $1 million within a few years. If my parents lost the house to a bank foreclosure auction, that equity would be wiped out completely. I looked at my parents. I did not feel pity. I felt a cold, calculating clarity. I have the money, I said quietly. My mother let out a loud gasp of relief, reaching across the table to grab my hands. Oh, Vivian, thank God. You are an angel. We will pay you back, I swear. We will pay you back every single month. I pulled my hands away from her grasp. I am not giving you a gift, Mom, I said, my voice hardening into a professional, unyielding tone. And I am not giving you an unsecured personal loan. If I provide $180,000 to cure your mortgage and fix this roof, I am doing it as a secured real estate lender. My father frowned, confused. What does that mean, Vivian? It means, I explained, leaning forward, that I will draft a formal promissory note for the sum of $180,000. It will carry a compounding interest rate of 7% annually, and that note will be secured by a deed of trust recorded against this property. My parents stared at me blankly. They did not understand real estate law. I am placing a lien on the house, I clarified. If you sell the house, or if you attempt to transfer the deed to anyone else, my loan must be paid back in full, with all accrued interest, directly out of the escrow funds before anyone sees a single dime. And if you default, I have the legal right to foreclose on the property myself. My mother looked horrified. Vivian, we are your parents. You would place a lien on our home. You would charge us interest. That is incredibly cold. What is cold? I replied, looking her dead in the eye. Is draining your retirement to fund your 32-year-old son's European vacation, while secretly taking out a second mortgage you could not afford. I am offering to save you from living in your car. These are my terms. You can sign the deed of trust, or you can pack your boxes and wait for the bank to evict you. You have until Friday to decide. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and walked out the front door. I knew they would sign it. They had absolutely no other options. 2 days later, my father called me. He sounded defeated. He said they would accept my terms. I did not use a cheap, downloaded internet template. I went to the senior real estate attorney at my firm. I paid him his exorbitant hourly rate to draft a bulletproof, ironclad promissory note and a deed of trust. The document contained a very specific, incredibly crucial paragraph known in real estate law as an alienation clause, or a due on sale or transfer clause. It explicitly stated that if the title of the property was sold, gifted, transferred, or reassigned to any other party without my express, written permission, the entire balance of the loan, plus all compounding interest and penalty fees, became immediately due and payable. I took the documents to a neutral notary public. My parents met me there. They signed the paperwork without reading the fine print, their eyes focused only on the check I handed them to cure their bank default. The next morning, I took the signed deed of trust to the county recorder's office. I paid the recording fee, and I formally placed my lien against the property. It was stamped, indexed, and legally bound to the dirt. For the next 4 years, an uneasy peace settled over our family. I managed the contractors who replaced the roof and retrofitted the foundation, ensuring my investment was protected. My parents lived comfortably in the house. They made small, sporadic payments on the loan, a few $100s here and there, but nowhere near enough to cover the compounding 7% interest. I did not bother to harass them for the money. The debt was secured by the house. I was simply letting the interest accrue in the background, exactly like a bank. Cameron eventually returned from his wellness retreat and moved back into the childhood home, taking over the entire finished basement. He was exactly the same, arrogant, entitled, and entirely dependent on my parents. I continued to focus on my career. I bought my own home. I kept my interactions with my family polite, brief, and entirely superficial. I thought the arrangement, while cynical, was stable. I grossly underestimated the depth of my parents' delusion and their absolute, terrifying devotion to the golden child. The betrayal occurred exactly 4 years and 8 months after I saved their home. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in my office at the title firm, running a routine search on a commercial property. I had just finished my task, and out of sheer boredom, I opened the county's public recording database. Occasionally, I liked to run my parents' names through the system, just to ensure no new tax liens or contractor disputes had been filed against the property. I typed my father's name into the search bar. I hit enter. A new document popped up on the screen. It had been recorded exactly 3 weeks prior. The document type was listed as grant deed. My blood ran completely cold. A grant deed is a document used to transfer the ownership of a property from one person to another. I clicked on the digital image of the document and pulled it up on my large monitor. It was a standard, 2-page grant deed. On the first line listed as the grantors were my parents, Thomas and Patricia. On the second line listed as the sole grantee was my brother, Cameron. Below that was the consideration amount. The amount listed was $0.00. It was marked as a bona fide gift between family members. My parents had secretly transferred the entire legal ownership of the $1 million childhood home, the home I had paid $180,000 to save from foreclosure, completely over to my brother. I sat back in my ergonomic desk chair. The silence in my office was deafening. I felt a cold, pristine clarity wash over my mind, erasing any lingering shred of familial loyalty I might have harbored. They thought they had pulled off the ultimate heist. I knew exactly what their logic was. My parents were getting older. They knew the property was appreciating massively in value. They wanted to ensure that when they passed away, Cameron would have a massive nest egg, so he would never have to work a real job. But why do it secretly? Why not tell me? Because they thought the transfer would invalidate my loan. People who do not understand real estate law often believe that if you change the name on a deed, the debts attached to the previous owner somehow vanish. They thought that by gifting the house to Cameron, my promissory note would be rendered null and void, because Cameron never signed the loan agreement. They thought they had legally bypassed my lien, securing $1 million asset for the golden child while leaving me holding a worthless piece of paper. They did not understand how a recorded deed of trust works. A lien is not attached to a person. A lien is attached to the dirt. It does not matter if you sell the house, gift the house, or transfer the house to the Pope himself. The lien stays on the property, and whoever takes the title takes the title subject to the lien. Furthermore, by executing the secret transfer, my parents had just triggered the explosive, due on sale or transfer, clause I had meticulously written into the contract. They had just legally accelerated the loan. The entire original balance, plus nearly 5 years of compounding 7% interest, plus penalty fees, was now immediately due. I did not pick up the phone to scream at my mother. I did not drive to the house to confront my father. When your enemy makes a catastrophic legal error in your favor, you do not interrupt them. You let them build their castle on the quicksand. I printed a copy of the fraudulent grant deed, placed it in a secure file folder, and waited for the inevitable climax. I did not have to wait long. 3 months later, my phone buzzed with a text message from my mother. It was overly cheerful, dripping with the fake, enthusiastic tone she used when she was trying to manage optics. "Hi Vivian. Hope work is going well. Just wanted to share some exciting family news. Cameron has decided to sell the house. He has an amazing opportunity to start a high-end boutique hotel business in the mountains, and the sale will provide his seed money. Your father and I are going to downsize to a condo. We are so proud of his new venture. The house goes on the market next week." I stared at the text message. The sheer, blinding arrogance of it was breathtaking. They had given him my childhood home, a home I saved, so he could sell it and play atelier in the mountains. And they expected me to be happy for him. I typed a very brief reply. "That is interesting news, Mom. Good luck with the sale." I did not mention the lien. I did not mention the $180,000. I just sat back and watched the dominoes begin to fall. 2 weeks later, the house was listed on the market for $890,000. Because of the highly desirable neighborhood, it received multiple offers within 48 hours. Cameron accepted an all-cash offer for $850,000, demanding a lightning-fast, 14-day escrow closing period. He wanted his money immediately. What Cameron and my parents did not understand is that when a buyer purchases a house, the buyer's agent opens an escrow account with a neutral third-party title company. The very first thing the title company does is pull a preliminary title report to ensure the seller actually has the right to sell the house, and to identify any debts attached to the property that must be paid off before the buyer takes ownership. 4 days into the escrow period, I received a phone call. It was not from my mother. It was from a woman named Brenda, a senior escrow officer at an elite title firm across the city. "Hello, is this Vivian?" Brenda asked, her tone crisp and professional. "Speaking," I replied. "Vivian, I am the escrow officer handling the sale of a property located on Elmwood Drive," Brenda said. "I am reviewing the preliminary title report, and I see a deed of trust recorded against the property in your name, securing a promissory note from 5 years ago. We are preparing the settlement statements for closing next Tuesday. I need you to submit a formal payoff demand so we can disperse your funds from the seller's proceeds." I smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile in the quiet of my office. "Hello, Brenda," I said smoothly. "I would be happy to submit the payoff demand. In fact, I am a commercial title examiner myself. I will have the formal demand letter, complete with the accelerated interest calculations due to the unauthorized title transfer, faxed to your office within the hour." Brenda paused, recognizing a fellow industry professional. "Excellent. The seller, Cameron, seems entirely unaware of the lien. He requested an estimated net sheet this morning, expecting the full cash proceeds." "I imagine he did," I replied. "Brenda, as the lien holder, I would like to attend the final closing appointment next Tuesday in person. I have the original promissory note to surrender." "Of course," Brenda said. "The signing is scheduled for 10 o'clock in the morning in our main conference room. I will see you then." I hung up the phone with Brenda, the escrow officer, and I turned my attention back to my computer monitor. The office around me was quiet, filled with the soft hum of servers and the distant chatter of my colleagues negotiating commercial leases. But at my desk, I was executing a financial demolition. When you draft a payoff demand for a real estate transaction, you do not simply ask for your money back. You submit a legally binding accounting of every single penny owed to you under the strict terms of the recorded contract. I pulled up the original promissory note I had drafted 5 years ago. I opened a fresh spreadsheet and began to run the mathematics of my family's arrogance. First, there was the principal balance, $180,000. Second, there was the interest, I had structured the note with a 7% compounding annual interest rate. Because my parents had only made sporadic, negligible payments that barely covered a fraction of the monthly interest, the principal had not decreased. It had grown. Compounding interest is a quiet, relentless machine. Over nearly 5 years, that $180,000 had generated over $70,000 in interest alone. But the true devastation lay in the penalties. Because my parents had secretly transferred the title of the property to my brother Cameron without my written consent, they had explicitly violated the alienation clause, the due on sale or transfer provision. My contract clearly stipulated that an unauthorized transfer constituted a catastrophic default. The penalty for this default was a flat fee of $50,000, plus all associated legal and administrative costs incurred to enforce the note. I tallied the final numbers. Principal, $180,000. Accrued interest, $72,400. Default penalty, $50,000. Administrative fees, $1,200. Total payoff demand, $303,600. I formatted the demand letter on my firm's heavy, watermarked corporate stationery. I signed it with a blue fountain pen, stamped it with my official title examiner seal, and faxed it directly to Brenda's secure line at the escrow office. Then, I ran the rest of the numbers for the house sale to ensure my trap was entirely inescapable. Cameron had accepted an all-cash offer of $850,000. It sounds like a massive windfall, but real estate mathematics are notoriously cruel to the uneducated. When my parents nearly lost the house to foreclosure 5 years ago, my $180,000 loan did not pay off their entire mortgage. It only paid the $40,000 in past due arrears to stop the bank auction, and the $140,000 to fix the failing roof and foundation. The original bank mortgage, the primary loan my parents had refinanced to fund Cameron's failed European business venture, was still attached to the property. That primary mortgage had a remaining balance of $460,000. Cameron and my parents believed that after paying off the $460,000 bank mortgage, Cameron would walk away with the remaining $390,000 in equity to fund his new boutique hotel business. They believed my loan was magically voided by the secret title transfer. They forgot about closing costs. And they forgot about me. If you take the purchase price of $850,000 and subtract the 6% real estate agent commissions, the county transfer taxes, and the title fees, you deduct roughly $60,000 right off the top. That leaves $790,000. Subtract the primary bank mortgage of $460,000. That leaves $330,000 in available seller proceeds. My legally binding, recorded lien demand was for $303,600. When the dust settled, Cameron's grand, life-changing payout for selling my childhood home out from under me was going to be exactly $26,400. Barely enough to buy a mid-sized sedan, let alone a boutique hotel in the mountains. I printed my payoff demand, placed it in a sleek black leather portfolio, and marked my calendar for the following Tuesday. Tuesday morning arrived with a clear, brilliant blue sky. I wore a tailored navy blue suit, a crisp white blouse, and my most intimidating pair of leather heels. I did not dress like a younger sister. I dressed like a senior corporate creditor arriving to collect a debt. I arrived at the high-end escrow office at exactly 45 minutes past 9 o'clock. The office was located on the 20th floor of a glass-walled skyscraper downtown. It smelled of rich mahogany, expensive espresso, and the quiet scent of massive financial transactions. Brenda, the senior escrow officer, met me in the lobby. She was a sharp, meticulous woman in her 50s who wore reading glasses on a silver chain. "Good morning, Vivian," Brenda said, shaking my hand firmly. "Your payoff demand was received and incorporated into the final settlement statement. The buyers wired their $850,000 into our escrow trust account an hour ago. We are fully funded and ready to close." "Have the sellers arrived?" I asked smoothly. "They have," Brenda nodded, gesturing down the long hallway. "They are waiting in conference room A. The seller of record, Cameron, is quite enthusiastic. He has already asked my assistant twice how quickly the wire transfer will hit his checking account. I imagine he is eager," I smiled softly. Shall we go in? Right this way, Brenda said. I followed her down the carpeted hallway. Brenda pushed open the heavy glass door to Conference Room A, holding it open for me to step inside. The conference room offered a panoramic, breathtaking view of the city skyline. Sitting around a massive granite conference table were my parents and my brother. Cameron was wearing a tailored linen suit, leaning back in his leather chair, tapping a gold pen against the granite with arrogant, restless energy. He looked like a man who believed he had just conquered the world. My mother, Patricia, was sitting next to him, wearing a silk blouse, beaming at him with absolute, unfiltered adoration. My father sat on his other side, reviewing a glossy brochure for luxury mountain properties. They were so consumed by their own triumph that they did not even look up when the door opened. "Good morning, everyone," Brenda announced, walking to the head of the table and placing a thick stack of legal documents down. "I am Brenda, your escrow officer. We are fully funded by the buyer, so we just need to review the settlement statement, collect your signatures, and we can close this escrow." "Fantastic," Cameron said, flashing a brilliant, charismatic smile. "Let us get this over with. I have a meeting with an architect at noon to discuss my new hotel lobby." "Before we begin the signatures," Brenda continued, her professional tone completely unwavering, "I need to introduce the lien holder of record for the secondary deed of trust, who has requested to be present to surrender the original promissory note upon closing." Brenda stepped aside. I stepped fully into the room, standing at the opposite end of the granite table. My mother looked up first. Her smile froze instantly. The color drained from her face as if someone had pulled a plug in her throat. She dropped her designer handbag onto the floor. My father looked up second. He let out a strange, choked sound, his eyes darting frantically from me to Brenda and back to me. Cameron, entirely oblivious to the tension, frowned. "Vivian, what are you doing here? Did Mom invite you to watch the signing?" Cameron was so profoundly uneducated in matters of finance that he did not even understand the words Brenda had just spoken. He did not know what a lien holder was. He just thought his little sister had shown up to applaud his success. "Mom did not invite me, Cameron," I said, resting my hands flat on the cool granite surface of the table. I looked directly into his eyes. "Brenda invited me because I am the bank." Cameron let out a short, confused laugh. "What are you talking about? You are not a bank. You are a title examiner." "I am the secondary creditor on this property," I corrected him, my voice carrying the absolute, chilling authority of a courtroom judge. "5 years ago, when your European business venture collapsed and left our parents facing imminent bank foreclosure, I loaned them $180,000 to save this house. That loan was secured by a recorded deed of trust, which means before you can sell this house and take a single dime, you have to pay me." Cameron stopped laughing. He looked at my parents. "What is she talking about?" Cameron demanded, his voice rising in panic. "Mom, Dad, you told me the house was clear. You told me you transferred the deed to my name so I would have the equity. You said her little loan did not count anymore." It was stunning to hear the sheer stupidity of their plans spoken out loud. "A deed transfer does not erase a recorded lien, Cameron," I explained slowly, as if speaking to a slow child. "It simply transfers the debt to the new owner. When you accepted the gift of this house, you accepted the legal obligation to pay off my lien upon the sale." My mother finally found her voice. She stood up, her hands trembling violently. "Vivian, how could you do this? You are trying to ruin your brother's big day. You know he needs this money for his hotel. You cannot enforce that loan. We are family." "I am enforcing a legally binding contract, Mom," I said, staring her down without an ounce of pity. "A contract you signed in front of a notary. You tried to secretly transfer the title to bypass my lien. You tried to steal $180,000 from your own daughter to fund your son's delusions. You thought I would not find out. You were wrong." I turned to Brenda. "Brenda, if you would please distribute the final HUD-1 settlement statements." Brenda, completely unfazed by the family melodrama unfolding in her conference room, handed a thick packet of paper to Cameron and slid another copy toward my parents. "If you look at line 504 on the second page," Brenda instructed, her manicured finger pointing to the paper, "you will see the payoff amount for the primary bank mortgage. $460,000. Cameron stared at the paper, his breathing growing shallow. "And on line 505, Brenda continued mercilessly, "you will see the payoff demand for the secondary deed of trust held by Vivian. The total payoff amount, including the principal balance, 5 years of compounding interest, and the default penalty for the unauthorized title transfer is $303,600. $300,000, Cameron shrieked, his voice cracking into a high pitch. He slammed his hands onto the table, glaring at my parents. Are you insane? You borrowed $300,000 from her. We borrowed $180,000. My father yelled back, his face turning a mottled red. He turned to me, his eyes wide with betrayal. Vivian, where are you getting $300,000? That is theft. We did not agree to that. I opened my black leather portfolio. I pulled out a copy of the promissory note they had signed 5 years ago and slid it across the granite table. Read the contract, Dad, I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. You agreed to 7% compounding interest. You have not made a meaningful payment in 5 years. The interest alone is over $70,000, but the real penalty is on page 3. I watched my father flip to the 3rd page, his eyes scanning the dense legal text. The alienation clause, I stated clearly. It explicitly states that if you transfer the title of the property without my written permission, you trigger a catastrophic default. The penalty for trying to secretly gift the house to Cameron is a flat $50,000 fee. You signed it. It is legally binding, and Brenda is legally obligated to deduct it from the sale proceeds. Cameron was hyperventilating. He flipped to the final page of the settlement statement, looking for the bottom line. He looked for the box labeled cash to seller. He found it. $26,000, Cameron gasped, his face completely pale. He looked like he was about to vomit on the mahogany table. I am getting $26,000. That does not even cover the retainer for my architect. The purchase price is $850,000. Yes, Brenda chimed in, perfectly polite. But after the real estate broker commissions, the county transfer taxes, the primary mortgage payoff, and Vivian's secondary lien payoff, the remaining balance is $26,400. Cameron turned on my parents with a vicious, ugly fury. The charismatic golden boy vanished entirely, replaced by a snarling, entitled monster who had just realized his ATM was empty. You idiots! Cameron screamed at my mother and father, completely disregarding the fact that they were sitting in a public office. You told me I was going to get $400,000. I already signed a lease for a commercial office space. I put down a non-refundable deposit. You ruined my business. You are useless. My mother burst into hysterical, loud tears. Cameron, please, do not speak to us like that. We did everything for you. We gave you the house. You gave me a house covered in debt. Cameron roared, throwing his gold pen across the room. It shattered against the glass wall. You lied to me. My father stood up, his fists clenched, but he was trembling too much to speak. He looked at Cameron, the son he had sacrificed his retirement, his credit score, and his relationship with his daughter to protect. He saw exactly what I had always seen, a parasite who possessed absolutely no loyalty or gratitude. I stood at the end of the table, watching the empire they had built on my back burn to the ground. If you do not want to sign the closing documents, Cameron, I offered smoothly, breaking through his tantrum, you do not have to, you can cancel the sale. Cameron snapped his head toward me, his eyes burning with hatred. Yes, I am canceling it. I am not giving you $300,000. I smiled. It was the smile of a predator who had completely sealed every exit. That is fine, I said, leaning forward. But remember, Cameron, by accepting the deed from our parents, you accepted the debt attached to the property. And because the secret transfer triggered the default clause, my entire $303,000 balance is due immediately. If you cancel this sale, I will formally initiate foreclosure proceedings tomorrow morning. Cameron's jaw dropped. I will seize the house, I promised him, my voice unwavering. I will auction it on the courthouse steps. You will be evicted. And because a foreclosure auction rarely brings full market value, you will walk away with absolutely nothing. $0. Not even the $26,000 sitting on the table right now. And your credit score will be ruined for the next 7 years, guaranteeing you will never get a business loan again. I gestured to the stack of paper in front of him. So, I concluded, you can sign the papers, pay your debts, and take your $26,000. Or you can throw a tantrum, lose the house to me, and walk away with nothing. The choice is yours, but I am getting my money either way. The silence in conference room A was absolute. The only sound was my mother's pathetic, quiet sobbing. Cameron stared at me. He looked for a bluff. He looked for the quiet, compliant little sister who used to take the bus while he drove a new car. He did not find her. He found a senior commercial title examiner who held his entire financial future by the throat. Cameron slowly sank back into his leather chair. He picked up a cheap, plastic pen from the center of the table. His hand was shaking violently. He pulled the settlement statement toward him, and without looking at my parents, he began to sign. The silence in conference room A was absolute, broken only by the sharp, angry scratching of the pen against the paper and the soft, pathetic sound of my mother's weeping. I stood at the end of the granite table and watched the execution of a financial reality they had spent their entire lives trying to avoid. In my profession, we often say that the closing table is where all illusions go to die. You can lie to your friends, you can lie to your family, and you can certainly lie to yourself. But you cannot lie to a balance sheet. The numbers demand an exact, unforgiving accounting of the truth. For 34 years, my parents had operated under the delusion that Cameron was a misunderstood genius, a golden child destined for greatness, who simply needed one more financial push to achieve his empire. They believed that if they sacrificed everything, including their integrity and their relationship with their daughter, Cameron would eventually reward them. But as Cameron slashed his signature across the final deed transfer, securing his pathetic payout of $26,400, the illusion shattered completely. He was not a genius. He was a parasite. And when he realized the host was out of blood, he did not show gratitude. He bared his teeth. Brenda, the senior escrow officer, operated with the cold, mechanical efficiency of a seasoned professional who had seen 1,000 families tear themselves apart over money. She systematically collected each document, verified the signatures, and pressed her official notary seal into the paper. The heavy thud of her stamp sounded like a gavel falling in a courtroom. "Thank you," Brenda said, stacking the paperwork into a neat pile. "The file is complete. I will authorize the wire room to disperse the funds immediately. The buyer's title will be recorded with the county clerk by 3 o'clock this afternoon. This escrow is officially closed." Cameron did not say a word. He threw the plastic pen onto the table, shoved his chair back so violently it crashed into the glass wall, and stormed out of the conference room. He did not look at my mother. He did not say goodbye to my father. He just walked out, leaving the people who had sacrificed their home for him sitting in the wreckage of his entitlement. My mother buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with loud, ugly sobs. "Cameron, wait," she called out weakly, but the heavy glass door had already swung shut behind him. My father remained frozen in his chair. He stared blankly at the empty space where his son had been sitting. The man looked broken. The arrogant, dismissive father who had tried to secretly transfer $1 million asset to bypass his daughter's loan had vanished, leaving behind a hollow, terrified old man with no home, no savings, and a son who despised him. I unzipped my black leather portfolio. I pulled out the original, notarized promissory note from 5 years ago. I placed it on the table and slid it across the granite toward Brenda. "Here is the original note," I said, my voice perfectly calm, entirely untouched by the emotional devastation radiating from the other side of the room. "I will await the wire transfer confirmation." "The wire has been initiated, Vivian," Brenda nodded, taking the note and placing it in her secure file. "It should hit your account within the next 2 hours." "Thank you, Brenda. It is always a pleasure doing business with a professional," I said. I closed my portfolio. I did not offer any words of comfort to my parents. I had warned them 5 years ago. I had laid out the exact terms of my loan. They chose to play a fraudulent game with a title examiner, and they had lost. I turned around and walked out of the conference room. I was halfway down the long, carpeted hallway, heading toward the elevators, when I heard the glass door open behind me. "Vivian, wait!" I stopped. I turned around slowly. My father was jogging down the hallway toward me. He looked desperate, his suit wrinkled, his face pale and drawn. He stopped a few feet away from me, breathing heavily. "Vivian," my father pleaded, his voice cracking, "please, you have to undo this. You cannot take $300,000 from us. That penalty fee, the $50,000, it is too much. You know we did not mean to hurt you. We just wanted to make sure your brother had a safety net. We are your parents. Where is your compassion?" I looked at him. I did not feel anger anymore. I just felt a profound, overwhelming pity for his total lack of self-awareness. "My compassion, Dad," I said, keeping my voice low and steady, was the $180,000 I handed you 5 years ago when the bank was exactly 3 days away from throwing you out on the street. My compassion kept a roof over your head, but compassion is not a blank check for you to commit fraud. It was not fraud, my father begged, reaching a hand out toward me. It was just a deed transfer. We are family. You tried to erase my lien. I corrected him sharply, stepping back so he could not touch me. You secretly gifted $1 million asset to a man who had already bankrupted you once. You tried to leave me holding a worthless piece of paper. You gambled with my money to feed his ego. I looked him dead in the eye. You did not lose your house today, Dad, I told him. You lost your house 5 years ago when Cameron defaulted on his European loans. Today, you just finally lost your delusion. My father's mouth opened, but no words came out. The truth of my statement stripped away the last of his defenses. He slowly lowered his hand, his shoulders slumping in total, agonizing defeat. Goodbye, Dad, I said. I turned around, pressed the button for the elevator, and stepped inside. As the stainless steel doors slid shut, the last thing I saw was my father standing alone in the hallway, staring at the floor. I took the elevator down to the lobby, walked out into the brilliant sunshine of the city, and got into my car. At exactly 15 minutes past 1 o'clock in the afternoon, my cell phone buzzed in the cup holder. It was an automated notification from my commercial banking app. I pulled over to the side of the road, put the car in park, and opened the application. There it was. A confirmed, cleared incoming wire transfer from the escrow trust account, $303,600. I stared at the numbers on the screen. I did not scream. I did not cry. I just took a deep, shuddering breath, and I felt a massive, invisible weight lift off my chest. For my entire life, my family had treated me like an auxiliary player. I was the backup plan. I was the workhorse expected to quietly fund the golden child spotlight. But in a single, perfectly executed legal maneuver, I had reclaimed every single ounce of my power. I was entirely free. The aftermath of the closing was exactly as brutal and predictable as human nature allows. When you hand $26,000 to a man with a $300,000 ego, the money does not last long. Cameron's grand plans for a boutique mountain hotel instantly evaporated. With no seed money, the commercial lease he had signed for his office space went into default. He burned through his $26,000 in exactly 3 months, spending it on expensive dinners, tailored suits, and maintaining the illusion of wealth to his social circle. When the money was gone, Cameron did what he always did. He turned to my parents. But my parents had nothing left to give. Because they had gifted the house to Cameron before the sale, they had legally relinquished all rights to the equity. They received absolutely $0 from the escrow payout. They had to move into a tiny, cramped, 2-bedroom rented condominium in a less desirable suburb. They were living entirely on their fixed Social Security income, counting pennies at the grocery store. When Cameron realized the bank of Mom and Dad was permanently closed, his reaction was vicious. He blamed them. He told them they were stupid for signing the promissory note with me 5 years ago. He screamed at them for ruining his life. And then he completely abandoned them. He stopped visiting. He stopped calling. Last I heard through mutual acquaintances, Cameron had moved to another state, living on the couch of a new girlfriend he was currently manipulating, desperately trying to pitch a new tech startup that did not exist. My parents were left entirely alone in their tiny rented condo. They had sacrificed their daughter, their home, and their retirement to protect a son who discarded them the exact moment they were no longer useful. A year after the escrow closed, my mother attempted to contact me. She sent me a long, weeping email begging for forgiveness. She told me how much they missed me, how hard things were for them financially, and how they wished we could go back to being a happy family. I read the email once. Then I deleted it, and I blocked her email address. In my profession, when a title is clouded by a fraudulent claim, you execute a quiet title action. It is a legal process that permanently extinguishes the rights of the toxic party and establishes the true, undisputed owner. I executed a psychological quiet title action on my parents. I severed the connection permanently. I owed them nothing. I had paid my dues, I had enforced my contract, and I was done. I took the $303,000 and I used it to build my own empire. I did not buy expensive cars or take lavish vacations. I am a commercial real estate expert. I used the capital as a down payment to purchase a prime piece of commercial real estate in the downtown financial district. I leased the building to a high-end corporate law firm. The monthly rental income from that single property entirely replaced my salary. By the time I was 36 years old, I was completely financially independent. I opened my own boutique title consulting firm. I dictate my own hours, I choose my own clients, and I answer to absolutely no one. I built a life of absolute peace, surrounded by friends who value my loyalty and colleagues who respect my intellect. My house is quiet. My ledgers are balanced. And my foundation is built on solid rock, completely free of any hidden clouds or toxic attachments. People who hear this story often ask me if I feel guilty. They say, "But they are your parents. They were desperate. You took their home and left them with nothing." I tell them exactly what I told my father in that hallway. I did not take their home. Their golden child took their home when he defrauded them and fled to Europe. Their own arrogance took their home when they tried to secretly bypass a legally recorded contract. I simply enforced the boundaries they agreed to. Enablers are not victims. Enablers are co-conspirators. My parents willingly set themselves on fire to keep my brother warm, and they expected me to provide the firewood. When you refuse to be the firewood, the arsonists will always call you selfish. If you are listening to this, and you are the scapegoat of your family, if you are the one who works quietly in the background while the golden child takes the credit, the cash, and the praise, listen to me very carefully. Stop funding their delusions. Stop shrinking yourself to make them comfortable. You do not need to scream at them. You do not need to beg for their approval or try to make them see your worth. They see your worth. They just view it as a communal asset to be plundered. Instead, start building your own fortress. Secure your finances. Put everything in writing. And the next time they ask you to save them from a disaster of their own making, make sure you draft a bulletproof contract. Because a toxic family relies on your guilt, but the law relies on mathematics. And mathematics has absolutely no mercy for a liar. That is my story. If you have ever had to enforce an ironclad boundary against an entitled family member, or if you believe in the absolute, undeniable power of a legally recorded lien, type the phrase, "cloud on title," in the comments below. I read every single one. Thank you for tuning in to Family Drama Files. Remember, your independence is not negotiable, and your peace is a premium asset. Protect it fiercely. Hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one.